Okay, I just started.
Okay,
Okay, you're good?
sounds good.
All right.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, I have an intro. Skip the intro. So this is episode 17 of the Bearzi podcast. Today we have Tia Atapattu, a Toronto videographer, and actually my first female guest other than my wife. So she's pretty excited about that. How you doing, Tia?
I'm good. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. Have you ever done a podcast before?
No, this is my first time actually doing a proper full-on podcast. So yeah, so I guess I'm your first, like, other than your wife, female guest, and my first podcast.
Oh, that's awesome. So I just want to tell you about how I actually found out about your YouTube channel recently, and this was like totally by fluke. If you're wondering how I even got in contact with you, but for whatever reason, I was searching up videographers like in the GTA in YouTube. And I can't remember the reasoning why, but for some reason I was just looking if they're looking for any local videographers that I could maybe go and shoot some B-roll with or something, right? Because I'm kind of stuck in this position where my friends are kind of stuck in lockdown because they live in different cities than me. So we can't really go and collaborate and go and shoot together, right? Because I'm in Mississauga, which is part of Peel, and we're in a strict lockdown, right? So I was looking if there's any other local videographers around, and I searched on YouTube, of course, right? And your channel or one of your videos showed up in the search, and I think it was like Toronto videographer, and it was detailing your story about how you got into videography, right? And I can't remember how many views it had. I think it maybe had a couple hundred views or so. But I'm always willing to give videos a chance, regardless of the amount of views or likes it had, right? So I clicked on it, and your story was actually really interesting. Not only was the story good, but like the way you speak and the way you told your story was, I don't know what the proper wording was, but I found it very inspiring because it kind of reminded me of myself when I first started off in the videography scene in 2019. And the whole the whole struggle of getting clients and getting gigs and getting a camera, and starting down that whole career path is tough, right? And then for you,
Yeah.
you were starting it in the middle of a pandemic, which is exponentially more harder, right? Because for me, all of my clients that I had for videography, they all closed or they all stopped hiring people because of the pandemic, right? So that's kind of how I had this interest. I just wanted to hear more about your story and like how your videography career is going so far, or how is it actually? How is it going?
Well, thank you. That's really sweet. I don't know, like I kind of just felt the urge to create that story and put it on YouTube because like I'm still starting out. Like I feel like I have absolutely no right to be like having like a proper channel and teaching people things, but I decided like at the beginning of this year that I was gonna do it just because I saw like a lack for female videographers like teaching on YouTube. And there are some amazing and great ones, but it's just like it's so limited in comparison to like male videographers. And I was like, well, somebody has to do it. Like I need to like share my story, even if it means like I'm still on it and I'm still walking that journey and I'm still kind of making mistakes and like figuring things out because someone will learn from at least my mistakes and maybe do better than I can do. So that's how it started. My career videography wise right now. So right now I'm not actually in Toronto. I'm
Oh
in
yeah.
I'm in Dubai with my family. So I hadn't seen them for a year because of the pandemic. So I was like, I'm gonna come home for a bit and just wait it out for a little bit. But it's actually going way better than I expected. Like I have a client from here that I'm going to be filming for, I think, in a couple weeks time. So It's going. I mean, however well a videography beginner career can possibly go in COVID. But yeah, I think I started because I started in the beginning of COVID because I was so bored. So I was just like, I just want to do something. Like it started because I was editing all of my family's like vacation footage, also kind of nostalgia because I wanted to feel like I could escape in some way. So I was editing all of this footage for them, and then I ran out of footage, and then I had to like figure out how to film things, and then I just got really into it, like learned Premiere Pro and all of that, taught myself a bunch of stuff. And then when I got my camera, I think that just everything like exponentially skyrocketed on how fast everything started moving.
Yeah, especially once you get the camera, and it kind of takes you to this next level where you feel like you're a true filmmaker once you get a camera. Something about shooting videos with your phone or a GoPro, it's like not the same. You almost feel like a fraud, almost, because
Yeah,
everyone has a smartphone or an iPhone, right? Everyone can just shoot videos. But it's not until you
yeah,
get into like actual videography of having a camera and lenses and ND filters and like all this stuff, shutter speed and whatever, right? Then you kind of, it starts that addiction, like that
yeah.
passion for filmmaking, right? And that's exactly how I felt as well. And I think I didn't watch all your videos, to be honest, but I saw another video where I think it was your boyfriend. Was it your boyfriend that bought you the camera or something?
He's my
And
fiance.
then,
Yeah,
oh, your fiance. Okay, sorry. And
yeah.
then, oh, congrats. But
Oh,
then
thank you.
you were like so happy, right? And I found it really genuine and really cool that he's kind of like supporting your passion, right? Because especially freelance videography work, it's not a profession that yields an extremely stable income, right? Or it's not a profession that the mainstream aspires to go down, right? And it can be very difficult, especially for family members, to support that type of work, right? When I don't know how your parents are, but like my parents and the older generation is kind of like, get a job, work in corporate America, get a 9 to 5. And this like videography, like what is that, right? Like taking pictures, taking videos, and it doesn't have that same level of respect. You know what I mean? And especially when you're starting out, just to kind of share some of my backstory, like I struggled. I struggled for the first year, just learning my camera, learning lenses, and like the amount of difficulty and heartaches you go through in the beginning as a videographer, it's horrible because you're doing work for free at the start, right? You're doing these gigs for clients that don't want to pay well, and even if they do pay, right, your proficiency with a camera at the start is not even that good, right? To be perfectly honest, at the beginning, there's so many things that you need to learn about your camera that it's you almost feel like bad taking someone's money for their work, right? But at the same time, you need to recognize that you are providing a client value, right? Maybe the only type of camera they know how to use is their phone, right? And maybe they want to use something more professional to shoot a commercial or make an ad for the business or whatever it is, right? But I find the biggest struggle with videography for myself is trying to figure out what your value is and like how to build up that confidence, right, to get more clients and get more gigs, right, and like figure out what's that perfect price that you're worth, right? Do you struggle with that as
Yeah,
well?
yeah. That's definitely the most difficult thing because it's like I can't, for me, I feel so bad to set just like a single price value on my work because it differentiates like between each project that you're doing. And then it's like, I don't want to charge a startup business a crazy price that's going to burden them in marketing costs when they can't afford that. And so I usually kind of just ask to be respectful what my client's budget is because and then create a bunch of packages based on that budget so they have like the option to go for a bunch of different things that could possibly work for them. I just can't put just a singular price on my work. Like it, because sometimes things I value as like really amazing, like this took me so long to create, like someone is going to be like, oh, that's not that great. So it's so difficult. Yeah, it's really difficult.
Yeah, yeah, I know exactly what you mean. For me, one of the biggest, like, I guess you would call it training grounds, was being like a third shooter at a wedding. So obviously, like, I don't know if you shot any weddings, but usually there's like a main shooter and a secondary shooter, right? And I wasn't even confident enough to be a secondary shooter. And I had a friend who hired me as a third shooter, right? And the only thing I did was like have my camera on a tripod, and I was like filming the bride and groom's parents' reaction during the speech. I was taking video of the cake and the decor, like all the super simple stuff that anyone can do, right? But that kind of like gave me that confidence in the beginning. It was kind of like I said, like my training grounds in the entry of videography work, right? And when you start off, I was taking like any money, whatever, $50, I'll take it, I'll do it, whatever job it was. And my best friend, he's actually a professional videographer, and he kind of helped guide me down this path. And he had all the craziest experiences you could ever imagine. Like one of his first gigs was doing like a funeral, like doing video for a funeral, and they're going to like a cemetery, and like that's so crazy, right? Like that type of work is like that's unheard of, right? And for me, I've been extremely lucky that I had a mentor who could teach me, right? And this isn't just like someone that I met recently. This is a guy that I've known since like grade 2 or something, like grade 1. Like we've been like childhood friends like our entire lives, right? And he got into videography, and I had no passion for it whatsoever. But it wasn't until like I picked up a GoPro, like just for fun, making like a GoPro family vacation video. That was what sparked my interest into cameras. And I learned so much from him by just having like a mentor, right, to ask questions to, and get advice for. That whenever I see a fellow videographer, especially one from Toronto or anywhere in the GTA, as I live in Mississauga, right, I'm always more than willing to help them or give them advice in any way possible that could help their journey, just like how my friend Brian kind of helped me, right? And I kind of have this mentality where um, I believe in helping each other instead of competing with each other, because I know there's this horrible famine mentality when it comes to videography, where if this person gets that gig or that client, then in one way or another you're somehow missing out because they're winning and you're not, and you're losing, right? And that way of thinking, in my opinion, is horrible, right? I feel like there's more than enough videography jobs to go around, and it's almost better to build like a community of positivity and like help each other, right? Like even if I help someone and they land a job that that I don't get, right? Like I shouldn't feel bad about that. I should feel happy for them, right? And this was kind of like part of the reason why I also started this podcast, right? Is to try to like, I don't know what I'm trying to do, but maybe I'm trying to build this weird community. Maybe it's online. I don't know, right? I'm still trying to figure out this whole entire goal. But definitely the whole videography scene is something that I really, really support. Even though, all my gigs, they all dried up. Like there's nothing. I'm not a working videographer at all anymore. And oh, do you know Ripley's Aquarium in downtown
Yes,
Toronto? Yeah, so
I
I was
love
working for
it.
them. Yeah, I was working for
Oh,
Ripley's before the pandemic, right? And that was my friend's client. Um, that like he was their videographer. And when you go to like Skydome, not
yeah,
Skydome, what is it called now? Rogers Center. I think it's
yeah,
where
Rogers.
Blue Jays play, right? There's like this
Yeah.
path where you walk, and then there's the Rogers Center, and beside it is Ripley's. And there's this huge like jumbotron that's displaying like the Ripley's commercial. and my friend made that, right? So he's been
Wow.
their videographer for years, yeah. But then he moved all the way to Kitchener, so that's out west, like down by Guelph, right? That's far from Toronto, right? And since I'm in Mississauga, I'm a lot more closer. I can just get on the 401 and I'm downtown in 40 minutes, right? And so he trained me, and then he passed that job on to me, which was like a gig every single month. Like every month there was work. There was Valentine's Day, there was Oktoberfest, there was like New Year's. Like
That's
every
amazing.
month there was
Yeah.
something. Yeah, there's something going on there, right? And it paid well, and then I was reinvesting that money into camera gear, and then COVID happened, right? And nothing. Remember, then they had an outbreak too. They had a COVID outbreak at the aquarium, and then it got shut down. And I was like, okay, well, shit. Now what do I do, right? Like
Yeah.
now I got nothing, right? But and that maybe that's the reason why your story kind of inspired me, because the COVID pandemic kind of derailed my career a little bit, but then it somehow sparked yours to start, which is like where I kind of viewed it as like a negative, like, oh man, there's no more work anymore. And then you're like, yo, I'm a up and coming Toronto videographer. I'm starting in a pandemic, I'm a woman, and I'm like, starting up as all this like energy and enthusiasm, right? And I was like, yo, I gotta talk to Tia.
Well, I think for me, it's just like I try to make the most of like a really bad situation. So just I can't sit and do nothing. Like anybody who knows me knows like the worst thing you can possibly do to me is like keep me in a place where I feel like I have no purpose. So I feel like I have to create that purpose for myself. And that's literally what happened in the middle of the pandemic, because I was going crazy. I was like, okay, now I finished editing everything. Now what? Like, what can I do next? And it started off with just like following a bunch of YouTubers, like videography YouTubers, and getting inspired off of their work, and then using like trying to learn those techniques on my own in my house, and getting my roommates to like help me out, and just like filming with me, or like learning different lighting equipments, or how to film like those epic b-roll commercials, all those little things that I felt like I would never get the time again where I could just sit and create what for me, all the things that I wanted to create. So whether that be just to experiment with just a bunch of different styles, or create a bunch of different spec ads for various things and edit together like a short film and everything, I knew that space and time was so limited, because COVID is a window. It's not going to last forever, we all hope. So
Yeah, I hope so too.
yeah, so I knew like there was going to be a time frame where I was going to wish that I had used that time to grow myself and to grow my passions in my career. So I wanted to make sure that every single month I could look back and see that there was some progress that I had made in how much I had learned. So it was just like constantly challenging myself. And through that, I got to a point where I was really confident in the work I was creating. And then I just sent out like cold emails to like 200 to 300 different restaurants
Okay.
downtown. And that's how, like, probably one or two only replied, but it's just like jumping with whatever opportunity is thrown at you.
Yeah, of course. Well, at least you're not like afraid to put yourself out there, right? Because so many people are afraid to even just ask. Like how you said, cold emailing companies, right? People are so afraid of rejection that they don't even, they don't even send the email, right? And what's the worst thing that can happen? They say no. Okay. Like, does that
Exactly.
hurt
Like,
you in some way? Like, does that, yeah, right? Like, does that do anything to you? No, it doesn't, right? So you might as well just keep trying. But do you have any like long-term goals for videography? Like, do you want to make it like a full-time career, or like YouTube? Like, what's the plan here? Do you have a long-term plan?
well, I definitely want to have a production company at one point in my life, like later on. But I know right now it's just trying to figure out what type of videography I want to like grow in more. I love commercials, but then I also love telling stories. So it's kind of putting those two together. Long term, it would definitely be a production company, make some documentaries or like short films. That's what I love doing. But yeah, right now it's more just like getting experience and learning as much as I can to make the best content and products that I can make. But for me, like I've always known I wanted to go into film. Like earlier you mentioned like about parents and everything, but I always told my parents like this is like the avenue I wanted to go in because I started off with acting. Like I used to take acting classes really young and I loved just I don't know, being either in front of the camera or just being on stage. I love that feeling and telling a story through characters. And then later it turned into like showing those characters behind the scenes. And I think I'm in that point right now where it's about creating those stories, like not being the physical representation of them by acting, but rather crafting them and showing real stories to an audience.
A couple months ago, I had this guy on the podcast from New York, and I think at the time he was 19 or 20. His name was Ryan, and he dropped out of NYU. And he was taking filmmaking, and he had this dream, like this dream of creating a production company, right? And he had a vision board on his wall, and he had all these goals that he wanted to make. And I think he had like six, or no, maybe not more than six, 8 YouTube videos. Like he had a couple YouTube videos, not a lot, but he puts like a huge amount of effort into his content, right? And they're really well done. And I think he had maybe like 1,000 subscribers when we did the podcast, right? And I was telling him like, hey man, like it's amazing at your age that you have a goal in your mind, a production company of what you want to achieve. Because if you have that goal of a production company, right? Say that's like point, Z or whatever, right? Then your brain will figure out all the steps on how to get there. Like there's going to be point A, B, C, getting a camera, lighting, scripting, whatever, computer editing software. And then your brain will figure out all the steps you need to get to the end goal, right? But if you never have the end goal, you never know, like your mind will never know how to get you there, right? And I found it really amazing that at such a young age, he knew exactly what he wanted to do in life. And in some ways, I was extremely envious because I am a lot older than this young YouTube generation. I'm 36, right? And I've done so many different types of work in my life. And I could never find that spark, like that passion. And I was at one point in time, I did have my own business for 9 years, and it was good, but then it kind of didn't last. And it wasn't until I was 34 that I discovered that spark, that passion for videography, right? And I was like, wow, this guy is like 19 or 20, and he knows in his soul what he's meant to do, right? And then we had a great conversation, right? And I was super, I'll always be super supportive of his work, as his videos are really well done. And then the craziest thing like I've ever seen happened. He had a video that started to get picked up by the YouTube algorithm, right? And he started getting like, I don't know, I think it was like 60 subscribers in one day. And then the next day getting like 100 subscribers. I was like, oh shit, that's a lot, right? And just as that video was being picked up, he was working on another video for I think like 2 months or so that he shot entirely with his iPhone because he couldn't afford to buy a camera. And then he posted that video, and it was so good. And you know how like people on YouTube will watch a video and then they'll go to your channel and watch whatever your most recent work is. So then all of a sudden people were watching this video that was trending, and then he just posted a brand new video. And then boom, that thing exploded, and it got like over a million views. And he went from like 1K subscribers to 80,000 subscribers. And now he had YouTube a partner program or whatever that thing is called, where you get the ads. He's getting AdSense money, and now he's starting that dream, creating a production company. And I was like, yes, right? I was so happy for him, right? And then I had this like amazing self-realization where in the past, I would feel jealous of someone's success, right? Because in one way or another, I'd feel like, oh, he's making it, but why am I? How come I'm not, right? And that's how I used to feel all the time. But now I was like, okay, I think my mentality, I'm actually on the right path, because I felt so much joy for him, and it was a huge pleasure for me because I got to talk to him before he blew up, right? So I got to, you know, meet who he truly was and talk to the person he is before, before the blow up, right? And
Right.
like sometimes that's all it can take. Like if you have that dream of the production company, it could just take one client video, one commercial, or one YouTube video, and then it just kickstarts the whole career, right? But I do think it's amazing that you have a similar goal. And wait, actually, how old are you?
I'm 21.
Oh my gosh, you young guys, man. It's like he's like, so you're like the same as him. It's like, watch one day all these people on the podcast is just gonna be blowing up, and I'm gonna be rooting for all you guys from the sidelines.
Well, it can happen to you too. I don't think it's about age, really. I mean, um, yes, I feel fortunate that I knew what I wanted to do at a young age, and like I was heading in that direction. But really, like, who's to say what age makes it? Like, it could be a long journey or it could be a short journey, but it's like you never know when that spark is going to happen or when people start to really appreciate what you are creating. But I think more than any of that, it's like as long as you're doing something that you are genuinely inspired by, you're getting inspired by your own work, or you're constantly being motivated to do something that you love and you have a passion in it. Like just because you love it so much, other people will fall in love with it as well.
Yeah, for sure. I understand the age thing. It's just weird from my perspective, because all these people I talk to on YouTube and stuff, everyone is like so young. It's like all you guys are like 18, 19, 20, and I'm like, oh man, I'm like the old dude that's like trying to get in this videography game like 15 years. I don't know, it just feels weird. It just feels weird for me in life, right? Because um it's like this whole like Twitch and streaming and YouTube and Instagram and TikTok and all this stuff. It's kind of like it's like a young person's game, right? It's like a young person's thing. And I'm not saying that this discredits my work in any way or another, but at the same time, it's just like, man, I wish I knew what I wanted to do when I was younger, right? But at the same time, I've learned um, so many life lessons from, like I dropped out of university, and I've worked like in the past 9 years, I had like 7 different jobs. So like I've done an incredible amount of like soul searching and just failing, just failing over and over and over until like it's almost as if like I was meant to learn like the hard way, right? And I feel
Yeah.
like the value that I can bring to the community is that if there's anyone younger than me that I could provide some type of advice or an avenue or a way to success to where it could help them, then I feel like that's the value that I can bring to other people. And even like you said, like doing work that you love and being inspired. Like after watching some of your videos, um, do you watch Daniel Schiffer?
Yes, I love Daniel Schiffer's work.
Ah, I knew it. I think the first thing that came to mind when I saw some of, I can't remember. It was like a drink, and it was moving, and you
Oh
had
yeah,
all the, yeah, and I was like, it's like a Daniel Schiffer inspired video, I think, right?
that definitely was. I think my early videography was very like Daniel Schiffer, Peter McKinnon inspired because that was just like where I learned how to like use movement and camera work and everything. So when I started learning that, I just wanted to experiment with it as much as I possibly could. And those were like the first ads I created.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, because I could tell like the style kind of like rubbed off, and I was into that stuff at first too, and it's a lot of fun, but also it's a lot of
It's
work
definitely fun.
too.
Yeah.
like the editing.
It's
Like
a
I'm
lot of
sure you
work.
know, like yeah. And actually, let's talk about camera gear for a second. Now that we're on the topic of epic B-roll stuff, what are you shooting with right now?
Right now, I still have the same camera. I have the Rebel SL2. It's a Canon, and I really, really like it. But I'm saving up to get the Sony A7 Triple I. So
Okay, the A7 III or the A7S III.
yes, those ones.
Yeah, that camera. My friend that I was telling you about that kind of like mentored me. Him and Daniel and all those guys shoot Sony. Like all of them shoot
Mhm.
with the A7 III and the A7S III. Like all of them, and that's like what inspired me. Now I'm a Sony shooter as well, just because of their inspiration. But unfortunately, I didn't have the budget. I couldn't afford the A7S III, so I
Yeah.
bought like the smaller, like the smaller mirrorless cameras, the Sony A6000 series.
Mhm.
So like when I've gone like to a shoot with some of those guys, they bring out like this huge A7 III with like this big lens, and I got this like little dinky. I think I should have it right here. I go to a shoot and I got this little thing.
But you know what? Like, it's model as much. I mean, yes, the A7 III is amazing. Of like the footage you can get from it, and there's so many like amazing things about it. But at the same time, it's like, yes, it's good to have a goal to get to that point, but it's about the content you're creating, because you can have a really great camera and still not shoot anything good. Whereas like you can also have an iPhone and have insane footage. So yeah.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's all about like not the gear you have, but it's how you use that gear, right? Like
Mhm.
that's what really makes a true videographer. But have you got the like the bug, like the gear bug where you're like looking up lenses every day? Like do you have that problem?
Yes, it's definitely an unhealthy addiction. I think right now I've just been like really wanting to get some amazing vintage lenses, just because I want to experiment with it and see what I can film with it. 'Cause there's so much character in those lenses. So I've been looking at a couple. There's one that I fell in love with when I saw, I saw a video that came and was recommended to on my YouTube account called the Super Takumar lens. But it's like this old, I think it's a Russian lens, but
Oh,
don't quote me on that. But it's really, really, really beautiful. Like the footage that you can get, how it captures like the colors and everything. I loved it, but I'm waiting to get that one.
oh, that's interesting. So you're into like the vintage. I don't know anything about vintage lenses. I know they give this like different look to the shot that the more traditional like newer lenses can't really make. I don't know how to describe it. It's like not as sharp, but it has like this super old, like really nice vintage aesthetic
Mhm.
to the shot. I don't know. Like I'm sure there's some value there that that you appreciate that I kind of don't understand. But I understand. Like I get where you're coming from though, because there are a lot of people that do like those vintage lenses. But the gear thing, I have the gear bug so bad. Like oh my gosh, it's horrible. Like I get it's like it's not like buyer's remorse, but like like I get like these lenses because I want to have all my focal lengths covered, right? So right now the cameras that I use are the Sony A6000, which is APS-C sensor, right? So it's not the full frame sensor like the Sony A7 III. It's like the smaller one, and the focal range that I have now is from 10 millimeters all the way to 350. Like I have that entire focal range covered, right? And in the past, I somehow thought that that in itself would make me a good videographer. But in time, you realize like that's not what makes you good. Yes, it's those are tools that you can use, right? Having a fast lens with an aperture you can open wide up, or like having like a wide variety of focal ranges is nice, and it can help you in your work, right? But it's still like, even to this day, 2 years later, I'm still learning my camera every day. Like there's so many features with these new mirrorless cameras. Like, oh man, it's so hard to to master them. And even like, as you see, there's all these new cameras that are coming out. There's a Sony A7C, the Sony A1, right? The A7S3. There's the FX3. I'm like, and it's like I can't keep up. I can't keep up with it all, right? It's a
Yeah.
little overwhelming. I don't know if you feel the same way.
I do feel overwhelming when I see like a bunch of videos come up on my YouTube recommended and it's a Sony camera like every 2 weeks.
Oh man.
But that FX3 looks amazing, and I was like wanting something like this where it's just like it's basically like filming like with a hybrid DSLR mirrorless, but it's like a full cinematic camera. So I think that's something that at some point in the future I would definitely invest in.
Oh, okay. Yeah, like that would be a great investment, like when you're going towards like the film production company, right? But like like your plan right now, I see you've been doing like kind of tutorial, like how to videos on YouTube. Like your most recent one was about a shot list, and the importance of like creating a shot list before going to a shoot. So is your plan right now to just like kind of provide value to other videographers with tutorials, and then later down the line you kind of want to transition to more cinematic, bigger productions? Like, is that the idea here?
Well, right now it's just kind of sharing things that I've learned. And right now, like on the channel, there's a lot of tutorials, but I'm also going to start like incorporating more of like short films that I create. And then maybe talking about that a bit later. And I wanted to just have maybe some behind the scenes on how I create a video or like take you through the whole process of that. But yeah, it's mainly just to kind of fill in a bit of a gap right now for things that I felt like, oh, I could have learned from this, or these are things that weren't spoken about that I have learned from, like mistakes that I have made that I wouldn't want someone else to make, or things that I have found important and so crucial in my filmmaking that I think would be beneficial for someone else.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like, especially for the people starting out, like that type
Mhm.
of information is huge. And I know that like your own mistakes and personal experience is the best teacher. Like everyone knows that, right? But at the same time, if you can learn from someone else's mistake and kind of bypass that whole like pain, like learning pains, like it's only beneficial to you, right? Because then it makes you more productive, it saves more time. And I feel like there's a lot of value from learning from other videographers who are going down the same path, like how I said, where I was starting off, and I literally like I didn't know anything. I didn't know like what the difference between 30 frames, 60 frames, and 120 frames per second was. Like I'm like, why? What, like why? I just shot everything in the highest frame rate possible. I shot everything in 120 FPS, right? Because I thought more frames is better, right? But then it's like,
Yeah.
oh no, like 24 or 23.976 is like the cinematic look, and then like 60 frames slow down to 40% is like that slow mo, and then 120 like, and then you're like, oh, okay, and then you learn, and it's almost as if I wish there was like a videography for dummies, like YouTube video. You know what I mean? Like that could just like all in one video that could just lay it all down for you and like give you a guide on how to start. But unfortunately, YouTube is like this platform where every video is on one specific topic, right? Because it's kind
Mhm.
of like how you grow a channel. It's not like you can make one video and then jam all the information into that video and then never post again. Well, then your channel is never going to grow, right? So unfortunately, there's this setup where you have to like post about B-roll, then make another video about your shot list, or make a video about your story, right? And then it just kind of gets kind of convoluted in the whole internet space. And it can be very difficult to find that information, for especially for a beginning videographer. And and especially like for myself, there was like so many mistakes I made early on that I wish, that someone told me about, right? And even like the ISO, I bumped that thing up to 2000 when it's dark, right? And it's like, yeah, it's like it's so lit up, right? But then it comes out all grainy, and my friend's like, well, why
Yeah.
don't you use the aperture? Why don't you open up the aperture? And I was like, doesn't the aperture make the background blurry? And he's like, no, man, it brings in light, right? It brings in light to the lens. And I was like, oh my God, it's so embarrassing.
These are the things that like people need to learn as beginner videographers, because I've definitely made that mistake where it's like I wanted the picture to look a little bit darker, and then I would increase my shutter speed, for example. And it's just like that's
Yeah.
not how it's supposed to work. That's not how you're supposed to actually, you're not supposed to move your shutter speed. You're not supposed to, like, there's certain things you're not exactly supposed to touch to change the aesthetic of the video. But it's like learning those mistakes and then watching your watching your footage back and being like, why is it so shaky for no apparent reason? And then you realize like, oh, okay, so my shutter speed was like at 400 when I was filming at 23 frames per second.
Oh
So
my God. Yeah, then the motion blur is all off, right?
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I know exactly. Because I had those same growing pains too as well. But like, it, I feel like if you have the passion for videography and you're willing to put in the work and go through all those hurdles, right? There's like so much opportunity out there for people. Like especially for myself, like Ripley's wasn't the only gig that I was working pre-pandemic. I did a couple videos for like an MMA gym, like a museum. Like there's endless amount of possibilities out there, right? You just have to go and find them. And even just like weddings, is like a super huge lucrative thing you can do in the summer, right? But the problem with weddings is like it always happens in June, July, August, right? And in the summertime, your friends always want to do stuff, right? But when weddings happen? Saturday and Sunday, right? So it's your weekends. So at the same time, it's like, are you willing to sacrifice your personal life to pursue like the videography path in weddings? To help you build up that experience, to help you build up that portfolio and client base, and even just like income, right? Because weddings, they pay a lot. Like they pay a lot of money if you're a first shooter, and even like a second shooter. I think when I was shooting, the third shooter would get like $200, right, for half the day. That's pretty good for a third shooter. You don't really do much. Second shooter gets like 600 for the day. Like that's solid money, right? Like $600 for a day's work. Like that's really good, change for like the business, or you can reinvest in some lenses or gear or whatever, right? And I feel like if you are a person that aspires to truly be a videographer, there is so much opportunity for you to like go after it. You just kind of got to put yourself out there, right?
Right. Exactly. And it's about that. It's really just like taking those risks and not being scared to put yourself out there, because what's the worst thing someone can do is just say no, and they don't even know you, so who cares? So I always like, there's this quote I love, and I don't know who it's by, but it's called, well, it's not called, but it's you miss every shot that you don't shoot. And I think it's so true, because it's like if you don't actually like take that effort to maybe email 5 extra people a day, 5 extra than you would have, you don't know if those 5 extra people would have given you that chance. And sometimes it is in that extra step that you take that you get that opportunity.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've heard that quote too. You miss the shots you don't take. Um, yeah, and even like at the moment, are you working like a job not related to videography to support it financially, or are you just all in like at this point? Like where are you currently in this path?
Well, right now I'm also like doing a full-time degree. So I'm kind
Oh
of like,
shit.
yeah, so it's like mixing both things. I am pretty much all in the videography, but I've also done like acting on the side here and there. But balancing that and trying to just get this degree out of the way, and I will be more all in.
Does the degree have anything to do with videography at all, or is it just like something completely irrelevant?
I'm doing a degree in cinema studies and media studies.
Oh, that's good.
So yeah, so it's very theoretical, I find, but at the same time, that can be good because when you're going into production later on, you want to know um, the theory of um, like film auteurs or directors and how they created their work and that history. I mean, it's not exactly always enjoyable, but no knowledge ever goes to waste. So I'm just like residing in that peace and comfort from that. But my media studies course is really interesting. It's basically like about social media advertising and just how to create influence in the media. So that's definitely applicable.
Oh, that's awesome though, because even then, it's like your like portfolio or like resume, you can have that, and I hate this fact that like our society has deemed that if you have that piece of paper, that degree, it somehow makes you more qualified, right? And unfortunately, it's true. Like it's true. There are some people that want to know what is your education background, like what have you studied, right? Even though it might not have any relation to how to use a camera at all, but still that like education is extremely valuable to some people, right? And like even though like I don't agree with it entirely because I'm kind of like an anti university college type of person, unfortunately. It's not that I hate on education. I just feel like going into like 40, 50, $60,000 in debt for like a piece of paper, it's like it's hard, and it destroys so many young people's career early on, right? But that's aside from the point. But I do understand that the value that society has placed on it and how that can be very beneficial. Because even like for me, like I went to Ryerson University, downtown Toronto, right? And I was studying computer science. Like, what does that have to do with filmmaking? Nothing. Like computer science, like programming, like it was so stupid, right? And the only reason I went is because I just thought you had to get a post-secondary education, right? And it was like, and if I didn't go, I felt like almost as if I would be like a loser or something. But then at the same time, I'm wasting all this time and money and just books and tuition and all that shit, and just going into debt, like for what? For something that I wasn't even passionate about, right? And this is where like my envy towards younger people come into play, because when I was 19, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I just wanted to play basketball and watch TV, you know what I mean? Like normal, like teenage stuff, right? And I didn't know what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. But it's like, oh, hey, if you don't go to university or college, you're going to be a loser. So you might as well go. So of course I go. I don't love what I'm doing, and then I dropped out and I wasted all that like time and money, right? So like, if you go and it's related to your passions in life, I'm 100% supportive of that, and I think that's amazing. But like, say if you were going to school and for like kinesiology degree, I would like what does that have to do with anything, right? Just because you're kind of like trying to please your parents or trying to please the societal norm of like getting an education, right? I don't know, that whole subject. I'm really conflicted with, because I do value like getting an education. I think there is an extreme amount of value in being disciplined and learning the theory, and getting that I don't know how else to put it, but being more educated at a higher level. Like I get it, but at the same time I kind of don't. But I think it's very good that you are at least doing something that's related to your passion, right? So that's I 100% on board with that.
I think for me, I totally understand where you're coming from because I think the way the world is changing, the value of a degree is going to definitely start becoming less and less based on what you're going into. Because of course, like if you're going to go into something very theoretical, like being a doctor or a lawyer, you need that because that is a platform, and those are things that you can't necessarily always learn on your own. But what I have found with my degree is it was really difficult for me, like really to just get into that headspace of doing a degree, because sometimes you don't see how is this going to be valuable to me. But it also pushed me to get that practical experience that I feel like I was lacking. And I think it was interesting in a way because I felt that there was a lack in what I was looking to get in my degree. It pushed me harder to go and achieve outside of that and build a resume alongside doing, yeah, my education. But also, as a woman who is of color and going into like the film industry, it's already difficult enough to try get your foot in. So the value of a degree is just so that way no one can give you a reason to reject you.
Mm-hmm. Have you like experienced like being a woman and your skin color? Has that ever held you back in some way? Like have people held you back because of that? Like have you experienced that at all?
I personally like haven't had experience, firsthand experience of that. That might also be because I'm still getting into videography. But I think it's really also just proving yourself constantly and having more faith in yourself than anyone else does in you. And I personally haven't experienced anyone saying no to me, like just because of me being a woman of color. But then also we're stuck in a pandemic, so no, there's no one really to say no to
Yeah,
me at
yeah.
the same time. But I do know that like the lack of representation is real. And there isn't that many people that look like me that I can say, oh, I can look up to this person and know that it is possible. Like I know there are a couple but there's very limited amounts in comparison to having a male who goes into videography and automatically will be respected. Like there's a lot more respect you have to fight for as a woman going into videography or even just the film industry in general.
Hmm. That's an unfortunate thing. That's a real problem, right? And especially it's more predominant in like the older generation, right? Like I understand from their point of view, but like the younger generation, I feel like even for like myself, I was born in the 80s and I grew up in the early 90s, and especially like living in like Toronto, you grow up with everybody, like African people, Chinese people, Indian people. Like it's like a such a diverse city, right? That I feel like more and more as the generations evolve, racism is becoming a very important topic, and even like sexism too, right? That I feel like the younger generation we are more aware of, right? And like even like when I, for example, like me, when I saw your YouTube video, I didn't think for a second at all, like, oh, it's a woman, um, and your skin color. Like I didn't even think. All I thought about was like, story is good, videographer, Toronto. Like that was what was in my mind. Like I don't care about like its sexual orientation or your gender or your like that doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is are you good, right? Like are you so good that is the story that you tell is undeniable that it's valuable and does it interest me? And if the answer to that is yes, those other external factors they don't matter to me, right? Like what does that have to do with anything, right? Like how does your gender, skin color determine your proficiency at a camera? It makes no sense, right? But unfortunately, I have talked to and seen older people, right, that somehow or another believe that like an older experienced male would be better for the job. And, that's sadly that is still a thing that exists in our society that we need to be very aware of, right? But I'm of the opinion that as time goes on, right, especially in a place like Toronto, the younger generation that are growing up now, they are extremely educated and extremely progressive when it comes to inequality and racial inequality and sexism stuff, right? And you know, if there's any way that I could like help anyone, like I'll help them regardless of what they look like or how they talk or anything like that, right? Like even my past podcast guest, right? I had a guy from Germany, right? I was like, okay, Germany, and then there was like a Chinese guy from New York, right? And it's just like it at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter, like your appearance, right? Like the question should be, how good are you at your skill or proficiency, right? Like how good are you as a videographer? How good are you as a storyteller? And I think that will rise to the top in the end. And it's just kind of it kind of makes me sad too, because there's this whole like Asian racism stuff going on now, like that you've heard in the news. And I'm extremely conflicted with this because my background is mixed, right? I'm half European and I'm half Japanese, so I am of half Asian and half like European descent, right? So, like, does that apply to me? Does like the Asian racism stuff apply to me? Well, I don't know. Like, do I look Asian? Probably not, but I am still half. So it's like I'm in this weird conflicting place where I kind of don't understand it. Like, I don't understand the hate towards people just because of their ethnicity, right? Like that kind of stuff drives me crazy. And I don't know. Maybe it's because the way I grew up. I grew up with like a complete diverse group of friends and people around me, and even my own background. I'm super diverse. I don't identify as any particular like country or ethnicity, right? When people say like, oh, I'm going back home to like India, or I'm going back home to like South Korea or something, I'm going home to Canada. Like I'm just Canadian. I don't identify as Italian. I don't identify as Japanese, right? I just identify as like a Canadian person. You know what I mean? And I feel like this like segregation that we have based on race and like gender and sex is just, I don't know, it's exhausting and it drives me nuts sometimes.
Yeah, it's true, and it's something that needs to change. But at the same time, it's like there's not going to be change unless there's open conversation about it. And I think that's what we can only do right now, right?
Yeah. Oh man, sorry to derail the podcast. It's just like all positivity that I just got like upset. I don't know, whatever. Yeah, maybe you'll be the female Daniel Schiffer or something. I don't know, and maybe you'll inspire young up and coming Toronto videographers. You never know, right? You never know what can happen.
Never know, but it's just trying to figure out what your path is and like how you can make your own guess mark in the world.
Yeah, that's true. And even I remember there was a speech once. I think it was by Michelle Obama, and she was saying how like the way she dealt with racism is that whenever people would like aim low or hit low, Obama would always like go high. Like if someone goes low, you go high, and you just beat it. You beat racism and sexism with better standards, right, and better discussion, and just like don't drop down to their level, right, and don't let that like discourage you, or hold you back, because there's plenty of people, just like myself, that we don't care, don't care about any of that stuff, don't care about skin color, whatever. It's just, are you good, right? That is the only thing that I care about. Are you good, right? And are you interesting? And I feel like if you just keep working hard towards your dream, of producing a production company, and then you can get there, right? It's just a matter of time if you just put in the work and the effort, right? And maybe you'll be the second person that has like a super successful production company that I talk to. That'd be amazing, because I have no goals of like of a production company. Like I view the videography stuff as kind of just like a side business hobby. I'm kind of more into like cinematic storytelling and conversations, and kind of like stuff like this, just learning from other people and just improving. And I view like the commercial gig stuff as kind of just like a side income or a side hobby that I'll do from time to time. And I think that as long as you know what you want to do with your time, right, or what you want to do with your life, then that's more than enough, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so just quickly going back to your degree, are you in first year, second year? Like how is it going?
I'm in my third year, but I'm also trying to finish by the end of 2021. So hopefully my last.
Oh, okay, that's all right. Is like the classes online?
Yes. So I've been taking full advantage of that and like kind of mentally dying, but with the goal to get my degree done by the end of the year.
Oh, okay. So, but what school is it? Toronto school?
UFT, yeah.
Oh, UFT, St. George.
Yes.
Oh man, I applied to St. George way back in the day, and they denied me because my grades weren't high enough.
Yeah, I was shocked.
Yeah, that's a hard school to get into.
It's definitely challenging, but hopefully it'll be all worth it by the end of this year.
Well, it must be like a huge relief for you that you can kind of like get that done. Was it also like a big point from your parents? Like are they like a firm believer of like getting a post secondary education? Is that part of the reasoning too?
My dad is definitely more like traditional with degrees and everything, but I think now with the pandemic and everything, they're realizing the importance also of getting that practical experience, and they were always like in support of that either way. But I think for us, like the deal always was that I would do the degree and I can do whatever I want as long as I am also doing that degree.
Oh, okay, that's cool. So they are extremely supportive of the whole production company filmmaking thing.
Yes, they knew that I wanted to do this since I was really really young. So they knew like I always knew my purpose was in entertainment. So it wasn't a big shocker to them ever.
Oh, that's amazing though, because so many people aren't that lucky to have parents that are that open minded and accepted of their children's dreams, right? And because especially a lot of parents, they like I'm a parent too. I have a daughter, right, and she's 1. And as soon as you become a parent, you have this weird conflicting mindset where you want your kids to be safe and secure at all costs, even if it contradicts your own personal beliefs. Like for me, I want my daughter to find her passion in life and do whatever makes her happy. And if it makes her happy, then I don't care, right? I don't care what it is, right? Whatever she wants to do, if it makes her happy and it brings her passion to her life, then I'm happy. But as soon as I became a parent, I had this weird thing in my mind where it's like, I want her to go to university and get a business degree and work a 9 to 5. And then I'm like, wait a minute, that contradicts my own personal beliefs. Like, where did that come from? Right. And so I've had to fight my instincts as a parent with my own personal beliefs, right? Because I don't believe that is a correct decision. I shouldn't force her to do something just because it'll make me feel better knowing that she has a comfortable job with pension, with benefits, with all that kind of stuff that makes a parent, feel more at ease, right? And more happy knowing that their child is secure, right? And it's like, and I get it. I get that mindset that parents have, right? Because, I'm going through it right now. But like you gotta be able to let it go. You gotta do what's best for your kids and let them like pursue what makes them happy, right? So I think that's
Right.
amazing that your parents are supportive of your whole videography stuff.
Yeah, they're great.
Oh, that's awesome. Hey, we just did an hour. How was your first podcast?
It was great. I actually really loved it. It was really nice just to like sit and chat and learn, to learn about your experiences and like talk about mine. I think it's always beneficial.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we got to do it again when you start your production company. You got to let me know how it's going.
I will for sure.
So let's let's plug all your socials, like your Instagram, your YouTube. Where can people find your work?
So for YouTube, I'm Tiana Atapattu. So um, I'm not going to spell the whole thing, but my actual name is Tiana. I just go by Tia. And my Instagram is also just my name, Tiana Atapattu. Basically, you can find me for anything just by typing my name.
Okay, awesome. I'll put links in the description of the podcast video if anyone wants to check out your work. So yeah, that was an awesome podcast. Thanks, Tia, for chatting and talking about everything. And best of luck to all the videography endeavors in the future.
Thank you, and thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, anytime.
Good.
All right, guys. Peace.
Bye.